Okay, so week 8 video submission. We are doing the spine. Walk through the setup for a cervical spine MRI. So for our setup, before we could go into the scan room, we gotta demetalize, check ourselves for keys, wallets, phones, our ID badge if it has a metal on it, jewelry, any bobby pins, and pretty much any metal or loose changes that we may have. And then also we gotta disinfect the all high touch surfaces, doorknobs, the scan table. Make sure we have clean linens, sheets or pillowcases. And then we gotta disinfect or clean up the pads, the padding that we're gonna be using. And then we have to have our provide the patient with the hearing protection, ready our padding and then ready our coil that we're going to be using, and the emergency squeeze ball for communication. What coil is used and how is the patient positioned? So for the cervical spine, or pretty much all the spine, we're going to be using the PA or phased array coil, phased array spine coil. Where is the laser landmark? For the cervical spine, landmark is going to be mid-neck, 1 to 2 inch below the chin. Angulation and coverage for sagittal sequence. So we gotta plan our sagittal slices on the coronal plane, and then we're gonna angle parallel to the spinal cord, and then our slice coverage is gonna cover from transverse process to transverse process. The field of view should cover the entire cervical spine from the pons down to the T4. And then we're gonna use a saturation band over the esophagus to avoid our swallowing artifacts. For the axial sequence, we're gonna plan the axial slices on the sagittal plane. We're gonna angle perpendicular to the spinal cord, and then our slice coverage is gonna be from C2 to T1, and then again saturation band is gonna be placed over the esophagus to reduce or to avoid our swallowing artifact. And then when would you be likely to run a coronal sequence? We're only gonna be using it for if we have a scoliosis diagnosis. Okay, so we have our thoracic spine. What coil is used and how is the patient positioned? We're going to be using the same coil for all of the spine scans that we're going to be doing. Thoracic spine, we're going to be using the PA phased array spine coil. And then laser landmark. So we do two kind of landmarks. If the protocol is using a counting localizer, we're gonna do same thing, the mid neck, 1 to 2 inches below the chin. And then if the protocol doesn't use a counting localizer, we're gonna do the mid sternum from T4 to T5. Angulation and coverage for a sagittal sequence. We're gonna plan the sagittal slices on a coronal plane. We're gonna angle again parallel to the spinal cord, and then our field of view needs to cover the from C1 to C2, and then slice coverage from transverse process to transverse process. And we gotta use the saturation band over the chest to avoid breathing artifact. And then for the axial scan sequence, we're gonna plan the slices on a sagittal plane. We're gonna angle perpendicular to the spinal cord, and then our slice coverage should include T1 to T2, saturation band placed over the chest to avoid breathing artifact. And then again, same for all the spine MRIs. The coronal is only going to be used for scoliosis diagnosis. So lastly, we have the lumbar spine. What coil is used and how is the patient positioned? Same coil, PA or phased array spine coil. Patient positioning is gonna be supine head first, and then our landmark for the lumbar spine, it's gonna be the mid abdomen, about 2 to 4 inches above the iliac crests. Angulation and coverage for a sagittal sequence for the lumbar spine. We're gonna plan the sagittal slices on a coronal plane. We're gonna angle parallel to the spinal cord. And then our field of view must include T11 through the coccyx. Slices must cover from transverse process to transverse process. And then we're gonna use a saturation band anteriorly to avoid artifact from breathing motion. Axial sequence, we're gonna plan the slices on a sagittal plane. We are gonna angle perpendicular to the spinal cord, and then slices is gonna cover from T11 to S1, and then we're gonna use saturation band. Place the saturation band anteriorly to avoid motion artifact. And of course, our coronal sequence is only gonna be used for scoliosis diagnosis.